If you drove past a gas station this morning and noticed the numbers flicker upward, 10 cents, maybe 20, take a picture. Freeze that glowing red price in your camera roll. Because if the chain reaction now in motion continues, you may look back at that image in 48 hours and realize you were staring at the last affordable tank of gas for a very long time. You are watching something bigger than a trade dispute, bigger than a press conference, bigger than a headline. You are watching two leaders test the invisible wiring that keeps North America humming, and you're about to learn how thin that wiring really is. This begins with a signature. Yesterday, 2:07 p.m. Eastern Time. A pen moved across paper in Washington. An executive order halted final operational clearance on the Gordie Howe International Bridge, the $9 billion steel artery designed to anchor the future of U.S.-Canada trade. The justification was national security, concerns about cargo inspections, border integrity, supply chain oversight. But bridges are not just concrete and cables. They are symbols. And this move was not merely bureaucratic, it was theatrical. The optics were unmistakable. Barriers placed, access slowed, a visual declaration that the United States controls the gate. What you are seeing is leverage deployed as spectacle. What was expected was outrage, a diplomatic scolding, a televised rebuttal, perhaps retaliatory tariffs delivered with carefully worded indignation. Instead, there was silence. For hours, Ottawa said nothing. No emergency press conference, no angry statements, just stillness. And then at 8:41 p.m., the numbers began to change. Pipeline flow data, quiet metrics that rarely make television, started trending downward. Not stopped, not severed, just reduced. A recalibration. An integrity audit announced on cross-border energy infrastructure. Safety review, temporary adjustments. Standard protocol, officials said. It sounded administrative. It was strategic. Because you may not think about pipelines when you pump gas, but the Midwest does not run on abstractions. It runs on heavy crude flowing south from Alberta. In states like Michigan and Ohio, a majority of refinery input is sourced from Canada. These refineries are engineered for that specific blend of crude. They cannot simply pivot to a different grade overnight. Infrastructure locks them in. Geography locks them in. And pipelines are not highways you reroute with a detour sign. They are fixed veins beneath lakes and farmland, designed for continuity. When flow slows, refineries respond immediately. Output adjusts. Inventories tighten. Futures markets begin recalculating. The markets knew before the voters did. By midnight, gasoline futures were climbing. Not gradually, vertically. Traders understand timing better than politicians. They do not wait for press conferences, they watch supply metrics. A sustained reduction of even 10% can tighten regional inventories in days. 20% can shock prices within hours. You may not see it yet at the pump, but you are standing on the edge of a repricing event. Because the United States imports roughly 4 million barrels of crude and refined products per day from Canada. That is not symbolic trade, that is structural dependency. In some regions, it is the backbone of energy supply, and this is where the miscalculation reveals itself. Blocking a bridge disrupts trucks. Slowing pipelines disrupts fuel. One creates headlines, the other creates scarcity. The bridge move was visible strength. The pipeline adjustment is invisible pressure. You are watching asymmetric leverage in real time. Leadership styles matter here. One approach thrives on confrontation, on demonstrating dominance through decisive gestures. The other operates like a balance sheet, quiet, calculating, weighing assets and liabilities before making a move. One sees negotiation as spectacle. The other sees it as risk management. In this unfolding standoff, psychology is as important as policy. If you believe economic relationships are linear, that the larger economy automatically holds the advantage, you miss the web. The United States economy is vastly larger than Canada's in aggregate. But leverage is not measured in total size. It is measured in choke points. Energy is a choke point. Refineries in the Midwest are not theoretical constructs. They employ thousands. They supply fuel for commuters, truck drivers, farmers. When throughput slows, downstream effects multiply. Transportation costs rise. Delivery schedules stretch. Airlines hedge. Logistics companies reprice routes. You may think this is about two leaders. It is about the architecture of interdependence. Within hours of the pipeline audit announcement, shipping contracts between Ontario and Chicago were being renegotiated. Insurance premiums ticked up. Companies hate uncertainty more than they hate tariffs. When supply becomes unpredictable, capital flees risk. The markets knew before the voters did. Behind closed doors, conversations shift tone. Governors call energy regulators. Refinery executives contact federal officials. Commodity traders refresh dashboards every 5 minutes. Because if the audit extends beyond a few days, regional inventories could tighten dramatically. Imagine waking up to reports of fuel rationing at select stations. Imagine logistics firms warning of delivery delays for food and medical supplies. You are not imagining apocalypse. You are modeling contingency. Energy markets operate on expectations. If traders believe supply will remain constrained, prices rise now, not later. That expectation filters into wholesale pricing, then retail, then your weekly expenses. And this is where the political calculus becomes fragile. Midwestern states are not peripheral in national elections. They are central. Rising gas prices hit commuters first. They hit small business owners. They hit farmers during planting season. Voters do not parse pipeline flow statistics. They see the number glowing at the pump. If prices spike sharply, narratives form quickly. The decision to block a bridge may have been framed as a show of border control. But if the downstream effect is triple-digit percentage increases in regional fuel costs, the perception shifts from strength to instability. Meanwhile, Canada's maneuver, framed as a safety audit, remains legally defensible. Infrastructure reviews are standard practice. No embargo was declared. No treaty openly violated. Just a procedural slowdown. That is what makes it potent. It transforms chaos into justification. It weaponizes bureaucracy without firing a shot. You are witnessing economic statecraft executed through paperwork. Now consider escalation. If rhetoric intensifies, tariffs could expand. Energy companies could face regulatory retaliation. Financial markets could interpret the conflict as structural rather than temporary. Scenario 1 is quiet de-escalation. The bridge clearance is restored with minor concessions. The pipeline audit concludes swiftly. Flow normalizes. Markets stabilize. Prices retreat. Both sides declare victory in different languages. The damage is reputational, not structural. Scenario 2 is escalation. Additional trade barriers emerge. Energy flow slows further. Canada explores alternative export routes more aggressively. East toward Europe, west toward Asia. Infrastructure investments accelerate to reduce reliance on U.S. transit. The United States seeks emergency reserves, but logistics lag. Regional fuel shortages intensify. Recession risks increase. Scenario 3 is systemic shift. Corporate pressure reshapes policy. Major energy firms, automakers, and logistics conglomerates intervene publicly, demanding resolution. Political coalitions fracture under economic strain. Trade relationships are renegotiated with explicit acknowledgement that interdependence is leverage. The North American economic model is recalibrated permanently. Each scenario carries consequences far beyond one bridge. Because what has truly been exposed is assumption. For decades, the U.S.-Canada economic relationship functioned as automatic. Energy flowed, goods crossed. Disputes were managed quietly. It was not merely partnership, it was integration. When integration becomes conditional, every supply chain acquires a risk premium. If Canada signals willingness to deploy energy as leverage, even temporarily markets will price that risk into contracts for years. Investors will demand hedges. Companies will diversify suppliers. Infrastructure will be redesigned. You will pay that premium invisibly in higher transportation costs, higher food prices, higher construction materials. Lumber, aluminum, fertilizer, uranium. critical minerals for batteries and defense systems. Canada holds substantial reserves of all of them. The question is not whether trade continues. It is whether it continues under new terms. The bridge confrontation may fade from headlines, but the precedent will not. Because once a supply chain is politicized, trust erodes. And rebuilding trust is slower than laying concrete. Leadership in moments like this is tested not by the initial move, but by the off-ramp. Can rhetoric soften without appearing weak? Can audits conclude without appearing pressured? Can markets be reassured without admitting vulnerability? These are not theatrical questions. They are economic ones. If you are watching gas prices tick upward, you're watching the scoreboard of that negotiation. This is not about loyalty or ideology. It is about leverage and perception. One side demonstrated visible control of infrastructure. The other demonstrated invisible control of energy. Both actions reveal interdependence that had been taken for granted, and once interdependence becomes a bargaining chip, the era of effortless trade ends. Zoom out. Imagine a North America where every major cross-border asset is viewed through a strategic lens, where pipelines, bridges, power grids, and supply chains are potential instruments rather than neutral platforms, where allies calculate leverage the way rivals do. That is a different continent. It is more cautious, more transactional, more expensive. You may not see the transformation immediately. It will not arrive with a dramatic announcement. It will appear in small adjustments, insurance clauses, diversification plans, energy hedges, infrastructure redundancies. But the shift will be real, because what happened with a signature and a safety audit is not just a policy dispute. It is a reminder that power in a modern economy is not measured by size alone. It is measured by dependency. And dependency cuts both ways. If de-escalation occurs quickly, this moment becomes a warning shot, a lesson in how tightly bound these economies are. If escalation continues, it becomes a turning point, the beginning of a colder, more calculated era of North American trade. Either way, the assumption of automatic cooperation has cracked. The numbers at the pump are the most visible symptom, but the deeper story is structural. You are not just watching gas prices fluctuate. You are watching two governments test the limits of economic leverage in a continent built on integration. The question is no longer who controls a bridge. The question is who controls the arteries that keep the engine running, and how far they are willing to squeeze. If this is merely negotiation theater, prices will stabilize and the system will reset. If it is something more, a signal that energy is now a strategic weapon in North American politics, then you are witnessing the beginning of a more volatile era. So, when you see that price sign glow tonight, understand what it represents. Not just supply and demand, but strategy and response. Not just economics, but psychology, because history does not always announce itself with explosions. Sometimes it begins with paperwork and a flicker on a gas station sign. Do you believe this ends with a quiet handshake? Or are we standing at the threshold of a permanent shift in how power moves across this continent? The answer may determine not only what you pay at the pump, but what kind of economic future North America is about to enter.